What if I told you that the blueprint for building lasting wealth doesn't come from the latest business trends or investment strategies? What if the key to financial success was hidden in the pages of one of the oldest books in history, the Bible? And what if I told you that a man who went from having everything to losing it all still managed to build an empire again, this time with divine wisdom? You might think you know how to build wealth, but you've never seen anything like this. Stick around, because today you're about to uncover the wealth-building secrets that have been buried for centuries, waiting for you to unlock them. What if I told you that true prosperity doesn't start with a big bank account or an expensive degree? It starts with something far more powerful: wisdom. Ancient wisdom that has stood the test of time. You see, most people are chasing wealth in all the wrong places. They turn to the latest trends, the most successful entrepreneurs, or the flashy new business ideas they see on social media. But they're missing the one thing that could truly change their lives: the power of divine knowledge. It's easy to look at someone's success and think, they must have had some lucky break. But the truth is that wealth, real, lasting wealth, is built on principles that are as old as time itself. And those principles? They're found within the pages of the Bible. Now, before you think I'm about to preach at you, hear me out. I'm talking about a system of wealth that transcends time and circumstance, one that has worked for generations, and one that has stood strong through every challenge humanity has faced. Let's take a closer look at a man who, in many ways, embodies this wealth-building system: Job. Job is a figure you may have heard of, but I promise, there's much more to his story than most people realize. Job's life was one of success. He had it all: a loving family, abundant wealth, and health. He was respected by everyone around him. But Job wasn't just lucky. His prosperity came from living in accordance with God's divine laws. He was a man who believed in the power of faith, integrity, and trust in God. But then, something shocking happened. Job's world came crashing down. He lost everything: his wealth, his health, even his children. To say it was devastating would be an understatement. He hit rock bottom. And yet, despite the magnitude of his loss, there was something that Job understood that most people miss. In the midst of his suffering, he trusted that the same God who gave him wealth could restore it. But Job didn't just sit back and hope for the best. His restoration didn't come from wishful thinking. It came from action. He remained faithful, even when the circumstances screamed that he had every reason to give up. Job's story teaches us the first and most important principle of wealth: that prosperity is not just about acquiring wealth, it's about stewardship. In other words, how we manage what we have today determines how much we'll receive tomorrow. Job was not just blessed with wealth, he was entrusted with it. And when things went wrong, when he lost everything, he didn't abandon his principles. He remained a good steward, even in the worst of times. And that's when the real wealth started to flow again. But here's where most people miss the point. They believe wealth is something you accumulate by grinding harder, working more hours, and doing whatever it takes to make a sale. While hard work is a part of the equation, it's only one part. The real key is to trust in God's timing. Think about it. If Job had been so focused on the idea of getting rich again, so consumed by his need to rebuild his fortune, would he have had the patience to wait for God's plan to unfold? Would he have trusted that the restoration would come? Or would he have tried to rush the process, causing even more stress and misfortune? The reality is that Job's wealth didn't return until he allowed God's plan to unfold naturally, according to his perfect timing. It's a hard lesson for all of us in today's fast-paced world, where everything is designed for instant gratification. We want things now. We want success now. We want our financial breakthrough today. But the truth is, if we try to rush it, we often sabotage our own progress. There's a wisdom in waiting, in being patient, in trusting that what is meant for us will come at the right time. That doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. Far from it. In fact, patience and action go hand in hand. Job never stopped doing what was right, even in the darkest times. He didn't stop being a man of integrity. He didn't stop working hard. He didn't stop trusting in God. And because of that, God was able to restore him, not just to his former glory, but beyond it. Job's story reminds us that the first step to building lasting wealth is to trust in divine timing. If we can learn to let go of the need to control everything and instead align ourselves with God's perfect plan, that's when things start to fall into place. Now let's dive deeper into another powerful principle that Job's life reveals: stewardship. Stewardship is about managing what God has given you with wisdom and care. It's about being responsible, not just with money, but with your time, your energy, your resources, and your relationships. The truth is, prosperity doesn't come from getting more. It comes from being faithful with what you already have. The Bible says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." Job proved this principle time and time again. Before he lost everything, he was a man who took care of his wealth and his responsibilities. After everything was taken from him, he didn't wallow in despair. He didn't abandon his duties. Instead, he continued to live according to the principles of stewardship, and that's when his restoration began. When you manage your finances well, when you invest your time and resources wisely, you're preparing yourself for greater wealth. But you can't skip the stewardship part. You can't expect God to bless you with more if you're not taking care of what you already have. If you're struggling with debt, if you're mismanaging your time, if you're wasting the opportunities in front of you, you're essentially closing the door on future blessings. On the other hand, when you show God that you can handle the little things, when you prove yourself trustworthy, He'll open the door to greater opportunities and greater wealth. Now let's talk about the biggest game changer in Job's life: faith. The kind of faith that says, "I may have lost everything, but I know that my God is faithful to restore me." Faith isn't just about believing in something that will happen. It's about trusting in the unseen, in the promises that have yet to unfold. And that kind of faith isn't always easy. In fact, it can be downright uncomfortable. Job's faith wasn't built in the easy times. It was built in the fire, in the times when everything seemed hopeless. It was during his lowest moments that Job's faith was tested. But it was also in those moments that his faith grew the most. Faith and action go hand in hand. Job didn't just believe that things would get better. He kept doing the right things. He kept living with integrity. He kept trusting in God's timing. And because of his faith and actions, God rewarded him. His wealth didn't just return, it multiplied. His story is proof that with faith, stewardship, and patience, we can rebuild anything, no matter how lost or broken it may seem. When you combine these principles, trust in God's timing, faithful stewardship, and unshakable faith, you unlock a pathway to true wealth, a wealth that goes beyond material possessions and into the realm of legacy, impact, and purpose. And that, my friends, is the kind of wealth that endures. Let's dive deeper into the powerful truth that Job's journey teaches us: stewardship. It's not enough to just get more. True wealth comes when we know how to manage and care for what we already have. Most people look at their money, their time, and their resources as something to simply accumulate and use however they please. But in the eyes of God, those things are gifts, entrusted to us for a greater purpose. Job was a perfect example of how stewardship works. Before he lost everything, he was known for his careful management of his wealth. But after losing it all, his attitude toward what remained never changed. In fact, it grew even stronger. Job didn't get caught up in the devastation. He didn't throw a pity party or act out in anger. Instead, he focused on being the best steward he could be, even with the little that he had left. In the Bible, we are taught that if we can't be trusted with small things, we'll never be trusted with greater things. Job knew this truth and lived by it. Even though he was now stripped of his wealth, he knew that his success was never about the amount of money he had. It was about how he managed his life and his resources. He didn't just sit back and wait for things to magically get better. He continued to be faithful, to work with diligence, and to honor God with everything he still had. When we look at our own lives, are we being faithful stewards of what we've been given? How are we managing our finances, our time, and our relationships? The truth is, we often fail to see the potential of the small things. But when we start to take care of even the smallest of blessings, whether it's a job, a small business, or a few $100s, God sees our faithfulness, and He rewards it. Stewardship isn't just about saving money or being frugal. It's about recognizing the value in everything you have and using it wisely. Even if you feel like you don't have much right now, there's power in being faithful with the little things. That's how Job's restoration began. It wasn't the huge moments of wealth that brought him back. It was the little things he kept doing faithfully, even in the midst of hardship. This brings us to a critical point: the balance of faith and work. It's easy to hear, just have faith, and think that means sitting around waiting for something to happen. But Job's story shows us the exact opposite. Faith without action is empty. When Job's life fell apart, he didn't just wait for a miracle to come. No, he kept moving forward with faith. He kept working. He didn't sit idly by. Instead, he kept doing what was right, even though it was hard. He didn't stop working his land, taking care of his household and helping others. His faith drove him to action. Faith and work together create unstoppable momentum. The Bible says that faith without works is dead. It's not enough to just believe in the outcome. You must believe that God has a plan for you and act on it. Job believed that God would restore him, but he didn't just sit and wait for restoration to fall into his lap. He kept trusting and doing the work that was in front of him, even in the most uncertain times. And it's in this action that miracles often occur. People often want a breakthrough without putting in the work. They want the wealth without the effort. But Job's journey shows us that God honors those who are faithful in action, even when things don't look promising. Let's talk about another aspect of wealth building that many people overlook: fear. Fear is one of the greatest barriers to success. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough. These are all things that can paralyze us and keep us from reaching our full potential. Job understood this on a deep level. After losing everything, he could have easily succumbed to fear. He could have been terrified of ever trusting again, of ever trying to rebuild. But instead, he faced his fears head on. He refused to let fear dictate his future. Fear would have kept him in a place of despair, but faith gave him the courage to keep moving forward. Fear can show up in many ways. Maybe you fear that your business will fail, or that you'll never be able to get out of debt. Maybe you're afraid that you're not smart enough or talented enough to succeed. But here's the thing: fear never leads to progress. It only holds you back. If Job had let fear consume him, he never would have had the courage to take the steps that led to his restoration. Fear keeps you stuck. Faith moves you forward. If you want to build wealth, whether it's financial wealth, emotional wealth, or relational wealth, you must first address the fear that holds you back. You have to confront it and choose to move beyond it, just as Job did. The reality is that fear can disguise itself as rational thinking, telling you to play it safe, to avoid taking risks, to keep your head down. But if you want to build anything of lasting value, you must take risks. Risk is where the real opportunities lie. Job took risks with his faith and with his actions. He didn't know exactly how things would turn out, but he knew that if he trusted God, he'd be guided to the right place. Sometimes, the biggest risk you can take is to trust God's plan, even when you don't see the entire picture. Job didn't know how his restoration would unfold, but he had the faith to move forward. even when the outcome seemed uncertain. It's easy to get stuck in fear, and it's easy to make excuses for why you can't take action. But remember, fear will never get you closer to the success you desire. Faith, paired with courageous action, will. The more you embrace your faith, the more you'll be able to move past the fear that holds you back. So, what's the message here? If you want to build true wealth, you need to understand that it's not just about getting more. It's about being faithful with what you have, trusting in divine timing, and working diligently, even when the odds seem stacked against you. It's about having faith and taking action, even when you're afraid. Most importantly, it's about knowing that you don't have to build wealth alone. God is right there with you, guiding your steps, restoring what's been lost, and blessing the work of your hands. You just have to trust Him and take the next step. No matter where you are right now, you're not stuck. You're on a journey, and as long as you keep moving forward, you'll get where you're meant to go. You might be thinking by now, all this talk about trust, patience, and hard work is great, but what about generosity? How does that play into building wealth? And here's where the story of wealth gets really interesting. The moment you start talking about generosity, most people's instincts are to pull back. After all, how can giving away your money or resources possibly help you build wealth? Doesn't that just make you poorer? It's the very thing that challenges everything society tells us about accumulating wealth. But let me share with you something that might completely shift your mindset. Generosity isn't just an act of kindness or charity. It's a strategic and powerful principle that unlocks divine blessings. In fact, one of the most surprising elements of Job's restoration is how generosity played a key role in his wealth-building journey. Think about it. Job didn't just sit back and wait for things to get better. Even when his wealth was restored, his generosity never stopped. He wasn't just focused on hoarding his wealth. He actively sought to bless others with it. We see this principle in action throughout the Bible. In fact, one of the most powerful scriptures that speaks to this idea is Proverbs 11:25, which says, "A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." This principle isn't just some nice sentiment, it's a divine law. Generosity is a key that unlocks abundance. Job understood this. He was blessed not just because he was faithful with his wealth, but because he gave. He gave of his time, his resources, and his heart. And when we do the same, something extraordinary happens. God sees our hearts. He sees that we're not hoarding what we have, but instead, using it to bless others. And in return, He multiplies what we have. Think about the paradox of generosity. The more you give, the more you receive. It doesn't make logical sense in a world that constantly tells us to save, hoard, and accumulate. But in the kingdom of God, it works differently. God's economy isn't based on scarcity. It's based on abundance. He is the ultimate provider, and He never runs out of resources. When we open our hands to give, we open ourselves up to receive more than we could have ever imagined. But it's not just about money. It's about giving of yourself, your time, your wisdom, and your talents. The more you give, the more you reflect God's nature. And just like Job, who experienced a supernatural increase after his act of generosity, so too will you see blessings poured into your life. I know this might sound radical to some, but let me challenge you. Look at the wealthy people around you, whether they're business owners, philanthropists, or even those who just seem to be living with purpose and abundance. What's one common thread? Almost all of them are generous. Generosity is the key that unlocks the door to sustainable wealth. It's not just about accumulating for yourself. It's about understanding that wealth is meant to flow. The more you bless others, the more it will come back to you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Think about the long-term impact of generosity too. When you're generous, you build relationships, you earn trust, and you establish a reputation for being someone who gives freely. This reputation alone opens doors for new opportunities. People want to work with those who aren't just taking, but those who are giving and building up others. In the end, it's the people who give of their hearts and resources, who build not only financial wealth, but a legacy that outlasts them. So, as we continue to explore these principles, remember, generosity is not just a nice thing to do. It's a powerful tool for increasing your wealth and influence. And when you get to the point where your generosity becomes a natural part of your life, you'll find that it's no longer a struggle to give. It becomes a joy, a part of the abundance that God is pouring into your life. Let's shift gears now and talk about wisdom, the kind of wisdom that truly leads to lasting success. We often think of wisdom as simply knowing what to do in any given situation, but biblical wisdom goes much deeper than that. It's not just about making smart choices today. It's about understanding how the universe works in the long run and aligning your life accordingly. Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." That's the kind of wisdom that Job had. He wasn't just relying on his own understanding to get by. He was trusting in God's wisdom. And because of that, he saw the fruits of that wisdom manifest in his life. Wisdom, in the biblical sense, is about more than just making good decisions in the moment. It's about seeing the bigger picture and understanding that every choice you make, every resource you use, every relationship you nurture, has long-term consequences. That's the difference between simply making a living and building wealth. Wealth isn't just about a job or an investment. It's about building a life with principles that honor God and serve others. When you tap into this kind of wisdom, you begin to make decisions that align with your true purpose. You stop chasing after fleeting desires and start making choices that will bring lasting impact. And that's exactly what Job did. He didn't just ask for his wealth back, he asked for wisdom. He asked for the understanding to manage his restored fortune in a way that honored God. And this is where we all need to grow. The wealth we accumulate in this world means nothing if we don't have the wisdom to steward it properly. Without wisdom, we'll squander everything we have. But with it, we can multiply our resources in ways that honor God's plan for our lives. If you want to see lasting wealth in your life, it's crucial to invest in wisdom. Seek it out through prayer, through the Word, and through godly counsel. Wisdom is not just a mental exercise, it's a heart transformation. It's the ability to look at your life and understand how your current choices will affect your future. The person who builds wealth on wisdom will experience true prosperity, not just financially, but in every area of life. The key here is realizing that wisdom isn't something we can generate on our own. It comes from God. And when you seek His wisdom above all else, your path becomes clear. You begin to make decisions that will lead you to places of greater opportunity, relationships, and financial blessing. The truth is, everything in life is connected. Your faith, your work, your generosity, and your wisdom. When all of these things work together, they create a powerful momentum that carries you forward. It's easy to overlook the value of wisdom in a world that's obsessed with speed and success. But wisdom is what will keep you grounded when the storms of life hit. Wisdom is what will guide you through challenges and help you make decisions that lead to long-term wealth. It's wisdom that tells you when to take risks, when to be patient, and when to be generous. And in the end, it's wisdom that will ensure your success is built to last. So, as you continue your journey to financial freedom and wealth, remember, the wisdom you seek today is the foundation for the success you'll see tomorrow. And just like Job, who sought wisdom even in the darkest of times, you too can rely on divine insight to guide your steps and multiply your blessings. The true measure of success is not found in the moments when things are going well, when the money is flowing, and the accolades are piling up. True success is revealed in how we handle setbacks and adversity. Most people think that when life knocks them down, that's the end of the story. They think that their dreams are over, that their opportunity for success is gone. But the reality is far different. Setbacks don't have to be the end. They can be the beginning of something even greater. Job's story is a testament to this. After losing everything, his wealth, his family, his health, most people would have given up. Many would have questioned why God allowed such suffering. They would have abandoned hope and allowed their circumstances to define their future. But not Job. Job's setbacks didn't define him. His response to adversity is what set him apart. He didn't let failure, loss, or pain define his potential. Instead, he stood firm in his faith, knowing that setbacks were simply setups for comebacks. Job's ability to remain faithful, even when everything seemed lost, was the very thing that positioned him for restoration. Think about it. If Job had cursed his circumstances, blamed God, or given up, he wouldn't have been in the position to receive the blessings that came afterward. But Job's attitude of perseverance in the face of suffering was the catalyst for his restoration. Job didn't just pray for everything to come back. He didn't just wish for his wealth to return. He trusted that God's plan was bigger than his pain, and he remained faithful through it all. In the face of adversity, Job had an unshakable belief that his story wasn't over, and that God would make a way where there seemed to be no way. This is where many of us find ourselves today. We face setbacks, whether it's financial struggle, a failed business, a lost job, or broken relationships. And we feel like we've hit rock bottom. We wonder if we'll ever be able to get back up. But here's the powerful truth. The greater the setback, the greater the comeback. And just like Job, your setbacks don't define you. They prepare you for what's to come. They mold you. They test your resilience, and they build your character. Every challenge is an opportunity for growth. Every setback is a setup for a greater success. It's not about how many times you fall. It's about how many times you get back up and keep moving forward. Now you might be asking yourself, how can I keep going when everything feels like it's falling apart? The answer lies in your faith and your perseverance. When you believe that your story is still being written, when you trust that God has a greater plan for your life, you begin to see your setbacks through a different lens. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, you start to view them as stepping stones to something greater. Every time you face a challenge, you become stronger. Every time you push through adversity, you come closer to the person you were meant to be. And here's the final, most profound truth. You have the power to create your legacy. It's easy to think that only the wealthy or the powerful can leave a lasting impact, but that's simply not true. Your legacy is not just about the wealth you accumulate, the possessions you acquire, or the titles you hold. It's about the life you live, the choices you make, and the impact you have on others. A true legacy is built on character, integrity, and a willingness to serve others. It's the mark you leave on the world by living a life of purpose and meaning. Job's wealth wasn't just about money. It was about the wisdom he passed down, the integrity he maintained, and the faith he lived by. His legacy wasn't defined by what he owned, but by who he was. And that's the kind of legacy you can create too. Your legacy is built on the choices you make today. Every time you choose faith over fear, generosity over selfishness, and patience over frustration, you are building a legacy that will outlast you. Every time you show up for others, serve them, and encourage them, you are leaving a mark on this world that will never be forgotten. So as you look ahead to the future, ask yourself, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? What impact do I want to make? The choices you make today will shape the life you live tomorrow. Your legacy isn't something you wait for. It's something you create. And you can start creating it right now. Whether you're just beginning your journey or you're in the middle of a setback, know this: your story isn't finished. You have the power to build wealth, to overcome challenges, and to leave a legacy that will inspire generations to come. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you experienced a setback in your life? How did it shape who you are today? Drop a comment below and share your story. Let's support each other and remind ourselves that no setback is ever the end. It's just the beginning of something greater.